Millions of people cannot fall asleep without the simulated hum of an electric fan, the looped digital patter of rain, or the low murmur of a television playing to an empty room. We build thick concrete walls to block out the chaotic world, insulating ourselves from the unpredictable streets outside, only to plug earphones in and flood our private spaces with artificial noise just to calm our racing minds. Why does a species that fought so relentlessly to conquer the wild now feel a subconscious terror of absolute quiet? The answer lies in a jarring evolutionary truth. Our ancestors never knew absolute quiet to them. A world that suddenly lost its soundscape was not a peaceful sanctuary, it was an active death sentence. Step into the sensory world of the Pleistocene. Survival relied on an entirely different way of processing reality. Ancient humans decoded the environment not primarily by looking, they measured the acoustic density of their surroundings. Vision is inherently limited by light, by dense foliage, by the curvature of the earth itself. Sound is omnidirectional. It bleeds through the dark and wraps around solid objects. Ancient hunters were master trackers possessing a near superhuman auditory literacy. They read the invisible spatial architecture of a landscape through the bounce of echoes off distant rock faces, the rhythmic cadence of insect chatter in the brush, and the shifting localized behavior of bird calls overhead. The environment was a three-dimensional map drawn entirely in sound. The forest was the sentinel network, a complex multi-species alarm system constantly broadcasting the vital status of the environment. Every rustle, snap, and chirp served as a steady stream of biological data, confirming that the ecosystem was operating normally. As long as the background noise hummed along in a predictable rhythm, the tribe knew they were safe. The ambient chatter of the wilderness was the ultimate indicator of a secure perimeter. The rustle of leaves meant the wind was behaving as expected. The frogs croaking near the river meant the water source was clear of heavy footsteps. Imagine that environment abruptly changing. The acoustic frequency of the jungle suddenly drops. The crickets stop rubbing their wings together. The canopy birds go entirely still. The ambient hum evaporates into a heavy, suffocating stillness. The human body reacts before the conscious mind even registers the change. A sudden drop in acoustic frequency triggers the freezing response, an involuntary, unconscious paralysis deep within the nervous system. Absolute silence is the biological footprint of a hidden apex predator. A leopard stalking through the tall brush does not announce itself. It pushes a wave of terrified silence ahead of it as smaller prey freeze to avoid detection. The silence moves like a shadow. Modern anthropological studies in acoustic ecology reveal that the human ear evolved to be hypersensitive to specific frequency bands. Our auditory processing is finely tuned to register sudden atmospheric drops and the sharp, high pitch of animal distress calls. We are hardwired to process the sudden subtraction of sound as an immediate life-threatening emergency. Indigenous tracking methodologies still rely on this exact principle today. A master tracker does not just look for bent twigs or shallow footprints in the mud. They listen for the expanding rings of silence that ripples outward when a dangerous predator enters a zone. Silence was never an absence of information. It was the loudest, most terrifying alarm nature could sound. This story is not merely about ancient hunters roaming a forgotten savanna. It is an unfiltered mirror held up to your own daily sensory deprivation. Modern architecture has birthed an evolutionary anomaly, the sterile room. We spend our lives inside soundproof drywall boxes, insulated from the living world by double-glazed windows and dense acoustic paneling. We perceive this isolation as luxury. Our nervous systems perceive it as an ongoing emergency. When we isolate ourselves in these modern, deadened spaces, we starve our evolutionary firmware of its vital safety data. Sensory neuroscience explains this physiological panic through a mechanism called auditory gating. The human brain continuously filters out irrelevant background noise to focus on immediate tasks. When external sounds completely disappear, the auditory cortex does not simply shut down and rest. It turns up its internal gain control. It actively searches the silence for hidden threats, increasing its sensitivity to the point where it begins to amplify our own internal anxieties. You hear the dull thud of your own heartbeat. You hear the rush of blood in your ears. Without the grounding presence of external noise, your restless thoughts become deafening. The brain creates noise out of nothing, desperately seeking the environmental feedback it evolved to process. Human biology fundamentally craves biophony, the sounds of living organisms. The absence of these life signals triggers a profound state of subconscious isolation. Your brain misinterprets this acoustic void. It scans the empty, quiet bedroom and assumes the entire ecosystem has gone dead silent because a predator is hunting just outside the bedroom door. That unexplained restlessness, the sudden bedtime anxiety, the hypervigilance you feel sitting alone in an empty house is not a modern mental bug. It is an ancient survival program executing perfectly. It is your nervous system screaming at you to find safety, forcing you to artificially recreate those missing life signals through modern media just to lower your heart rate and blood pressure. A podcast playing at low volume tricks the primitive brain into believing the tribe is awake and keeping watch around the fire. The white noise machine mimics the steady, safe rush of wind through the trees, signaling that the predators have not frightened the forest into hiding. We use algorithms and digital streams to hack our own prehistoric threat detection systems. We engineered the perfect sterile environment. We built massive concrete fortresses to keep out the cold, the dark, and the danger, finally achieving the absolute quiet our ancestors could never afford. We chased this ultimate comfort for thousands of years only to realize that a completely silent world is a dead world. We sit in our sealed, quiet boxes, feeling a primal unease we cannot name. We reach for our glowing screens in the dark, turning on the sound of fake rain or simulated distant voices, using the ghosts of artificial noise to cure the very loneliness that modern silence created.